Hello and welcome to BioBiz Buzz, a podcast on the science and business of biotech, pharma, and medtech. I'm Cormac Sheridan, and this week we're going to explore new possibilities in the area of reproductive medicine and women's health with ReproNovo, a company that demonstrated continued investor interest in this area by closing a $65 million Series A round back in May. In this episode, I'm joined by Jean Duvall, CEO and co-founder of ReproNovo. Jean, you're very welcome to BioBiz Buzz.
Thank you, Cormac, and thank you for providing me the opportunity to talk with you. I look forward to it.
Yeah, and this isn't our first encounter, of course. We met at the BioEurope meeting in Stockholm last November, in the same week that Donald Trump was neglected for his second term as US president.
Yes, and that was, we were in the midst of our Series A fundraising, and we had strong interest and excitement on our programs, and we were meeting with investors and the like at that. And it was nice to have a chance to meet you for the first time.
Yeah, and I do remember you said you'd had an initial close of the Series A back then, but you hadn't completed the transaction. And around the same time, I remember even speaking on some panels at the meeting around this, that a lot of commentators assumed that Trump's election would introduce new uncertainties for biotech investors, given his unpredictable, to put it mildly, attitude to science and healthcare. In your case, at least, that wasn't the case at all. I mean, when you disclosed your Series A round about 6 months later or so in May, the scale of the transaction and the quality of the investor syndicate was really noteworthy, led by Jada Capital, top-tier European VC fund, an awful lot of other well-known names in there. And 65 million, it's a substantial Series A round, especially for a European company still. And a kind of deal like that doesn't happen overnight. So I'd like to talk about how you put the deal together, the key goals attached to the financing, and, if I may, from the buy-side perspective, what do you think were the key drivers that enabled you to close the transaction?
Okay, I will give you my best shot at answering the question. So you're right, Cormac. This type of deal doesn't close overnight. You have to have perseverance and grit. It takes time, particularly when you have a very deliberate strategy you're approaching. And we wanted long-term partners who understood the science and understood the urgency for innovation in reproductive medicine and women's health. So our investors brought forward either they already had a deep domain knowledge in this area, or they really rolled up their sleeves to gain that domain knowledge. It was impressive. And importantly, as a co-founder, they all had a proven track record of supporting companies through clinical development. And that was essential to us that we had that. So we were very deliberate in that way. What we wanted to achieve with the 65 million was to advance. We have two products that we've either acquired or in-licensed. The first product, RPN 001, or as one person said, 001, is for male infertility. And the second product we have is RPN 002, and that has two indications, embryo implantation and adenomyosis. And for all three indications, we're looking at phase 2 clinical development.
If I can just hop in there, adenomyosis, I'd say that's not a condition with which most people are familiar. Could you maybe explain that?
Sure. So it's actually a condition that has recent paper has shown has similar prevalence to endometriosis. But the difference is in adenomyosis, the lining of the uterus migrates into the uterus itself. So you end up with lesions within the uterus, and these cause, unfortunately, these cause pain and heavy menstrual bleeding. And 82% of women who have adenomyosis end up with a hysterectomy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. 82%.
Yep. As far as we're aware, there's no drugs in development for this disease, and there's nothing approved. So the unmet need is quite high.
And what's the kind of prevalence of it?
Similar to endometriosis, it's
Wow.
quite prevalent.
Yeah.
In fact, if you think of it as a Venn diagram with one circle being adenomyosis and another circle being endometriosis, it's an overlapping. Unfortunately, some women have both, but the circle sizes we believe are similar.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted you. You were saying about financing is giving you runway up.
The financing we did was to allow us to do the phase 2 studies for the 3 indication and gives us a runway through to 2027. So one of the reasons we were so deliberate in the investors is we wanted to have investors who could really provide strategic guidance and a strong global network to build our company, as we really want to be the leader in R&D for reproductive medicine and women's health. And in women's health, I should be clear, we're focusing on women of reproductive age because that's our expertise and where we think the unmet need is highest, is least addressed currently.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair enough. Okay.
And then an investor point of view, and it's even interesting from, because you mentioned Trump, infertility, reproductive medicine has gotten a lot more attention and has become much more visible to the general public and to investors. People now realize that infertility affects globally 1 in 6 couples. And if you look on a regional basis, in the Americas, it's 1 in 5, and when you get to Asia Pacific, it's almost 1 in 4. So people have become investors that the unmet need and the commercial opportunity is quite large. And that's been something that's happened with, and I'm grateful to media. They have brought it much more to the attention of the general public and investors. So we were fortuitous there. And women's health as well, that this is a very large area with many diseases having no treatments or limited treatment options, and that there's an opportunity for innovation there. But specifically to ReproNovo, besides the therapeutic areas, I think what the investors saw was the strength of our team. Among our team, we have decades of experience in reproductive medicine, and our broad team has a track record of bringing fertility and women's health drugs, bringing them through development and approval. In fact, our chief scientific officer, JC, has led the development and approval of 8 global drugs in these therapeutic areas. And our broader team as well. And then 2 is we really focused when we went on the quality of our assets. When we were looking to what we'd acquire or in-license, we paid particular attention to, we wanted drugs where the mechanism of action was very clear and understood. We wanted supporting clinical data because that reduces risk for development. And then third, which I started with, is just broadly reproductive medicine and women's health I believe we're at the beginning of a wave where these areas are now being recognized as areas that need innovation, and the commercial opportunity is there.
Yeah.
The need is there.
And yet, as a company, I mean, you're a Series A, but because you've taken this in-licensing route, you're not a typical Series A company that is preparing to do translational development and preclinical yada, 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 and hoping to reach the clinic in 2028 or something. You're in the clinic now, and you have assets in your pipeline that have already been in the clinic elsewhere. What was the sort of strategy there? Did you sense that there were undervalued or underappreciated assets out there in chemical space or in the pharma world? How did you formulate or develop a search strategy, if you like, to appraise the assets? And how did you home in on the ones that have ended up in your pipeline? That's leflutrozole, I always mispronounce names of drugs, and nolasiban.
So we, of course, went through a screening process in looking for a compound. We have a team that has deep expertise in reproductive medicine, clinical development, CMC, regulatory, business development. So as we screened through, did our detailed due diligence on them, and then we started to negotiate, and that was also part of it. Could we get reasonable business terms to make it attractive for investors? Because not with every asset that doesn't always work. If you can't get good business terms, and it's hard for an investor to come in. So with that, we felt confident in selecting nolasiban and leflutrozole. we wanted well understood, as I said, what we thought in our strategy would be important for investors to make sure, and for us, because we're founders, we're putting ourselves behind this as well, to make sure we understood the mechanism of action, that the clinical data supported what we wanted to do, and where the unmet need, the commercial opportunities, we would be either be first in class, first in disease, would be real. Because it's not enough to say, oh, these are underserved, under-innovated. You have to show there is need out there and there's a commercial opportunity for investors.
Let's discuss maybe if I can interrupt you there, sorry, the mechanisms actually. Are these molecules, the two molecules, doing in the three indications in which they're going to be deployed collectively?
Okay, so let's start with leflutrozole, which is an aromatase inhibitor. What that does, it blocks the enzyme aromatase from converting testosterone into estradiol. This class was originally approved for postmenopausal women with breast cancer to drive down estradiol levels. But by preventing the conversion of testosterone to estradiol, you help to raise testosterone levels and bring down estradiol levels. By doing that, by increasing the testosterone, you improve semen quality,
Mm,
is our belief.
that's extraordinary. And can I interrupt you there? Are the dose levels similar, or is it a completely different way of deploying the same molecule in the low infertility setting?
So it's a different way of employing the same class. It is a new chemical entity that has never been approved, but we are looking at a lower dosing because we're looking to not drive estrogen down to zero, but to still have some level, but primarily we're looking to improve testosterone. So we're focused on male infertility for men with low serum testosterone. That's
Mhm, mhm.
group of patients we're at. And what we're looking to do is improve their testosterone level, lower the estradiol level, and as a result, spermatogenesis improves. It also impacts in a very positive way LH and FSH, which also helps drive spermatogenesis.
And for the benefit of those who may not have done the biology, that's luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. Am I right?
Brilliant.
I just pulled that out of the dark recesses of my memory. And actually, just before we get on to nolasiban as well, we should talk about the clinical trial because leflutrozole is already in a phase 2 and it's 200 patients according to clinicaltrial.gov, right?
Yep. So we announced recently that we had our first patient first visit for leflutrozole. So the trial is up and running. It is 200 patients. It's in the US. It's a dose ranging study with 3 doses and a placebo. And it is looking to recruit and treat infertility, male infertility with men with low testosterone.
Yeah. And how do you actually measure that? Is that a motility measure or is there some other way of assessing the impact of the drug?
So you're looking at semen quality, which can include number of sperm or motility, those type of measurements
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
see, are you improving semen quality?
I presume successful conception isn't necessary. That's too long an endpoint to wait on, I presume.
So for the phase 2 trial, no, we will not be looking at pregnancy or conception.
Yeah. Is that maybe a requirement for phase 3 down the
For
line or?
phase 3, that is potentially, it will be a discussion with the regulatory authorities, what will be the endpoint required.
Yeah. I'm no expert, but I would imagine that the factors around sperm quality are quite strongly predictive of successful conception, right? Are they?
There's 2 interesting papers, showing, exactly that, out of the US, which show that as you improve semen quality originally, we thought there might be a limit, like, oh, you get to a certain count, you don't see any improvement, but what the papers actually showed is as, semen quality or sperm count continued to improve, the pregnancy rate also improved with it, that there was a direct relationship between, semen quality and pregnancy. So there are 2 papers on that, and those are more recent publications, both out
And
of the
just in terms as well of the trial, the inclusion criteria, obviously it's males with infertility. Is it infertility arising from any additional condition or what are the sort of inclusion, exclusion factors to get out of the trial?
So the primary one is low serum testosterone. There's others, of course, but the primary one is a range for semen quality, but quite a big range, and low serum testosterone.
Okay, yeah. Then on to nolasiban. Tell me how that works.
Okay, that's an interesting one. So that's an oxytocin receptor antagonist, and it does two things. It decreases uterine contractility, and it improves blood flow to the uterus. So these are both important for embryo implantation, as you can imagine. If you're doing an IVF procedure, if the uterus is quiescent, we believe this will improve embryo implantation. And then adenomyosis, the disease, as we discussed earlier in the podcast, that the disease comes from the tissue, the lining of the uterus migrating into the uterus itself. We believe with nolasiban, by lessening uterine contractivity for adenomyosis, we will improve to lessen pain and to lessen menstrual bleeding.
Yeah, because the actual contractility, is that what results in painful cramps,
That
basically?
is, we believe that. We also believe there is a possibility that it also might impact disease progression as well, because with one of the hypotheses for adenomyosis is that the contractility causes microtraumas in the uterus, and that opens up the ability for the tissue to migrate into the uterus.
That's absolutely fascinating, actually. Yeah, that's amazing. So, as we've discussed, these assets were already trialed elsewhere. Leflutrozole, as far as I know, originated in Novartis, and then Mereo Biopharma picked it up and did some work, and nolasiban came out of ObsEva. So they obviously tried these drugs, didn't take them forward. Now, obviously, there's $65 million worth of due diligence behind the fact that they still have potential. So I'm not second guessing your investor syndicate, but obviously there's reassurance that there's potential here that is underexplored or untapped. Can we maybe talk about that?
Of course. So let's start with leflutrozole. It was originally developed, as you said, by Novartis. Novartis ran it through a phase 2A, and then did a spinoff to a company called Mereo Biopharma. Mereo did a phase 2B. In their phase 2B, they were focused on testosterone replacement in obese men. And while the data on testosterone, LH, FSH was, it's met that primary endpoint, they were also required to show improvements in patient-reported outcomes for the indication they were pursuing. And unfortunately, they were unsuccessful with that portion. But they did have an exploratory endpoint on semen analysis, and that data really caught our eye and we thought was very interesting. And because we're focused on reproductive medicine versus, if you want to say, testosterone replacement therapy, this exploratory endpoint and some publications made us believe this drug could be great for male infertility with low testosterone. So we're pursuing a different indication than Mereo did.
And by the way, too, are you excluding obese men from the trial for that reason, or does the trial include people with obesity as well as low infertility?
So we include obese men, overweight men, and normal weight men. We do not have a weight restriction. We do have other things from a safety perspective, but we do not have a weight restriction on
Okay. Yeah.
either on the high end or the low end.
Yeah, I hear you.
But they must have a low serum testosterone, a male infertility issue.
And then the clinical experience then with nolasiban.
Okay, so that drug has never been looked at for adenomyosis. So there we are starting afresh. We, based on papers and work even another big pharma had done, we thought adenomyosis was a really interesting, based on the mechanism of action, candidate for this disease. So that again is a brand new indication that has not been looked at for this. With embryo implantation, it was originally Merck's compound, and it was spun off to ObsEva.
I didn't know that actually.
ObsEva they had a successful phase 2 and one successful phase 3, but unfortunately the second phase 3 did not meet its primary endpoint. We looked at the data and we are pursuing it in a different way than it had been in the past. And we think there's an opportunity. IVF success rates are modest, and we think we could improve the success rate for that, which would
And
put less burden on women. And
yeah,
because each cycle, if we can improve the success rate, they might need fewer cycles, and each cycle having a higher success rate.
and have you disclosed yet the different emphasis in terms of how you're pursuing the indication, or is that still
No, we
under
have not
wraps?
disclosed that yet because we're still in the process. We acquired this asset in the fall of last year, and we are now working through all the particular details on that. So,
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting when that information becomes available at whatever point down the
yeah.
line, because new scientific insights are always really interesting. Yeah, okay. So then the question of safety obviously is key in all areas of drug development. But I would imagine that there's far less margin for error in reproductive medicine than there is, say, for example, in metastatic cancer. And is it difficult to attain the right balance between ensuring very high levels of safety while eliciting appropriate biological activity? How do you approach that kind of question?
So it's a great question, and you're correct. If you look in oncology, traditionally, efficacy was primary, and these side effects, the safety was secondary. For reproductive medicine and for women's health, you just have to think differently. It's not more difficult, it's just how you approach the problem. Not just, you have to realize your safety is primary and your efficacy is also, but you can't take risk. You have to make sure that it's a safe drug for obvious reasons. I can't say it's more challenging. It just means you have to be very rigorous in looking at it.
Yeah, no, I take your point that the bars are just differently kind of
They're
set at
just
different
different.
levels. Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
once you put that mindset and you know that's the mindset, it's a definable problem. And we're very lucky because remember we've both drugs have had significant. Leflutrozole has been exposed to close to 500 patients, and nolasiban even more. So we are with drugs where we have a high level of confidence that
Hmm.
will be safe.
Yeah, and obviously that argument was certainly sufficient for your investor syndicate, which was able to consider things at far greater depth than I'm able to do so.
No, of course, that was I mean, as are so many other parts of the diligence, but
Yeah.
yes, this is
So now you're kind of executing, I guess, and the phase 2 infertility is up and running. What's happening then with nolasiban in terms of clinical plans?
okay. Good question. So nolasiban, as I said, we acquired. We are now in the CMC portion with nolasiban, manufacturing, drug substance, drug product, IMP. We are in that process with nolasiban, and once that is complete, which we're anticipating in Q4, we will then start the clinical trials.
And will you move into both clinical trials in each indication next year, or
So
is it?
yeah, next year we would move into both. Exactly.
Okay, well, that's interesting. So you'll have three, and will they be, roughly speaking, substantial size phase 2 trials, as is the case with leflutrozole?
Yes, not as large. That's a dose ranging
Mhm.
study, so they will not be quite as large, but they will be meaningful trials with
Yeah,
meaningful endpoints.
yeah, that's fair enough. Okay. And then just to look at the competitive landscape, as you were saying, you really are addressing gaps that haven't been adequately kind of addressed until now. Is there any competition out there in the particular spaces that you're currently addressing?
So personally, we welcome anyone who's doing R&D and innovation in these areas. As far as we know, as I said, with adenomyosis, we believe we will be first in disease. With embryo implantation, yes, others are looking, and again, we welcome people looking at this and seeing it's modest now. And as you know, each cycle is very expensive. If we can help increase the success rate, we will do that. And then with the male infertility, we would be the first oral drug available. It's very limited what's currently available in male infertility. It's injections only that have a high burden on them. So we're excited with all drugs. It looks like we could have quite a nice path forward.
And then
I
just,
wanna emphasize that we are positive on, and we'd love to see others come into this area because
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
need, there's many critical gaps besides the 3 we're focused on,
Yeah.
and looking for more. Maybe
Yes.
time we
And I
might.
know there have been some nice M&A transactions in recent years, say Candy's deal with Bayer, for example, and there are a few little things bubbling around, all right. And then just from an organizational point of view, you're American, ReproNovo.
Wait, Swiss American, I'm both.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I had not actually appreciated that. I apologize.
No, it's okay.
And the company is kind of quite European at this point, at least. You're headquartered in Lausanne, in Switzerland.
Correct.
Main R&D in Copenhagen, smaller R&D group in Barcelona. So you're like a mini multinational already. How did this come about? How's it going to evolve? And where does the US fit into this? Obviously, it remains the pharmaceutical number one marketplace for pharmaceuticals.
We do have quite a multinational team. In the US, we actually do have employees and are up and running there. So it's smaller. Our biggest site is Copenhagen. How did we come this way? It's Switzerland because that's a relatively easy place to establish and build a business. Copenhagen, the team, the talent, particularly the clinical development talent was there. Barcelona were really also is expanding into the biotech pharmaceutical area. There's talent available there. And then, of course, the US, we need, just as an aside, we have a legal entity out of China as well.
Ah, okay.
We'll be doing 2 phase 1 in China.
Mm-hmm.
So we will be truly multinational.
Yeah, you're already well on the way, as we're, yeah.
Exactly.
And then say, I mean, over the next, I don't know, say you're saying you've got cash runway till 2027. What's the sort of the expectation? Where will you be at within that time frame?
So in 2027, there'll be a strategic decision to either consider an exit as a company or perhaps an exit with one asset or with one only asset. And then there will be a possibility for a Series B to go into the registrational trials. So it really depends on what the investors and board decide. Do we prefer to exit as a company? Do we prefer to exit with a particular asset? Or do we prefer to go on to a Series B? And we're comfortable. All options are on the table.
Yeah, and you have the wherewithal and the strategic flexibility and capability to take you to those decision points.
Exactly. We're comfortable. We've done it before to bring things through registrational trials. We can do that.
Yeah. Well, it's an ambitious agenda, and
Yeah.
I wish you and your team very well in these endeavors. Thank you for joining us today on BioBiz Buzz, Jean.
Thank you, Cormac. It was a wonderful interview. I really appreciate it. And again, thanks.
And thanks everyone for listening to this episode of BioBiz Buzz. We welcome your feedback, comments, or thoughts on this or other episodes. So if you want to get in touch, please log on to biobizbuzz.com or comment on LinkedIn, Blue Sky, X, or Facebook. And please continue listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. In the meantime, goodbye for now.